For many African countries, the question is not so much how to reduce their carbon footprint, because the continent already contributes very little to the global greenhouse gas emissions. It's actually below 4%. Instead, we must examine how the continent can sustainably harness its existing resources to meet the growing demand for energy needed for economic development and to lift up citizens out of poverty, while at the same time, as Marco put it, following the sustainable path to a net zero future. Now, having said that, Pablo, my question goes to you, and I think I'm following on one of the slides that you had. In fact, it was Robert, not Pablo. But can you just give us high level, what has been the journey in terms of Chile to date, especially in relation to, in your strategic plan, or the Chile greenhouse, the Chile strategic plan for green hydrogen speaks to bringing the price to 1.5 USD per kilogram by 2030. So what has been the journey, and how do you see that unfolding to that stage?
Hi, how does we, sorry, I couldn't hear you exactly how has been the journey?
Yes, the journey. So the anticipation in your strategic plan, right? Because Chile is one of the
okay.
Yes.
Firstly, in the strategy, unrelated to your question, to your context, the strategy, the national strategy of Chile has three waves, if you want to say. First wave is to have local usage, and then the second and third wave are for exportation, are thought for exportation. Currently, we have a new government administration, and they are updating, they created a new committee, a sort of governmental committee, with more than 10 different ministries, only for hydrogen coordination, and they will update the strategy, and all the information goes to the utilization of hydrogen at a local level. So related, we have the same question like in our country related to gas emissions, because we also contribute little to the world, and we see that the hydrogen can be a solution for the local usage as a fuel, zero emission fuel, and also it can help a lot in the transport, of course, in the transport and hard to abate sectors.
And the pricing?
Well, that is a very, very good question, because as I showed in the last slides of the presentation, you don't need the price of hydrogen in 1.5 or 2.0 US per kilogram if you are competing or you are utilizing that hydrogen replacing fossil. You just need around 6 or 7.0 around that numbers of US dollars per kilogram if you want to replace like transport or that use diesel or benzene. So you can be competitive, not having the 1.5, but if you want the usage as a local usage. For big amounts of projects, you need like if you want to export, you will need less than that price. But and as the previous speaker told, the number of 1.5 was 2 years ago because of the cost of natural gas. But nowadays, you are reaching, like, the natural gas prices are higher because of the war, and also the ammonia. So that means you can be competitive with a price a little bit higher rather than 1.5, and you don't need to push so much the cost of the agreement.
Thank you. Thank you. Marco, in terms of the concession that you got, it's a 40-year concession, am I correct? Right. Yes. Now, where do you see the break-even over that period where this new huge investment being anticipated?
Interesting question. I think we'd say that the project is viable from day one. And to look at some of the mechanisms, you clearly got a market pricing, and that market pricing is still evolving. Nobody knows yet what green hydrogen will trade for, how it will be priced. And you have a whole lot of mechanisms that have been imposed in Europe around carbon pricing. So if you look at, I'm going to just focus on ammonia. If you look at ammonia, for example, what is the carbon taxes that are going to be imposed upon users of that energy in Europe? It's going to be a couple $100 a ton, probably more. What is the incentive changes around mandatory blending of products in order to drive the decarbonisation? We would see there's a strong potential, we think, for mandatory blending of green hydrogen in the form of ammonia with grey ammonia. And that creates a price floor. What is also emerging, if you look at something like Germany with H2 Global, you have support mechanisms where the German government is looking at putting its balance sheet on the line in order to support offtake agreements. These are all mechanisms that are going to be used to stimulate an industry that is in its early stages of development. I think if you look at the pricing today of green ammonia, as I touched on earlier, economically it is now cheaper today with current gas pricing to make green ammonia than it is to make grey ammonia. That's a fact based on the economics. Yes, there's a whole lot of scale-up that needs to happen across the value chain that exists, but we think that those support mechanisms are going to be very, very important in terms of establishing that commercial underpin for the earlier projects to deal with some of the risks that Robin was focusing on. Is how do you mobilize that amount of capital? And there is a disadvantage of going first because you do lock yourself into the top end of the cost curve. And to get very, very boring, this is a cost of capital game. We're not manufacturing something where we have to pay for the inputs. The inputs come from the natural resource. You need to deploy enormous amounts of equipment, and you deploy that at one. You have a fixed cost when you deploy that. You can't go back and rechange your cost base. Your operating costs are relatively low. Therefore, your cost of capital is a major, major, major driver of the delivered cost of hydrogen. So we always talk about cost of capital. It's certainty for investors. The certainty of the investment climate is incredibly important, as important, or sometimes even more important than the value of the resource. You need them both to come together.
Robin, the Deputy Governor was supposed to be here with us, so some of the macroeconomic questions, I'll throw them to you. And the first one comes your way. Obviously, with the green transition towards renewable energy, there's an anticipation that there's going to be an additional structural inflation coming through over the next years as a consequence of this transition. What is your sense in terms of Namibian economy and the general prices in
It's going to become a major exporter of green hydrogen, green ammonia. It's going to become a major exporter of oil and possibly gas as well. This is all in the coming decade. And the question, I suppose, is, I framed my presentation, it was very much based on Namibia exporting green hydrogen. And then the Namibian market develops. If we get that right, the Namibian market will develop naturally. If for some reason green hydrogen prices stay very high for much longer than we're currently expecting, and then we're forcing that higher price on the Namibian economy, that's going to lead to problems. So I think we have to do a lot more thinking, Salmai, about this transition in Namibia. I can't imagine people driving hydrogen cars within the next 5 or 10 years in Namibia. or even battery electric vehicles, given range constraints here. I mean, I know my Namibian friends, you know, they haven't got lots of money, they can't go out and buy a Tesla. We're talking about taxi drivers in Windhoek having to carry on with their taxis unless government's going to come along with a big sack full of money and say, here, have a Tesla instead of a battered old Nissan, whatever it is they drive at the moment. So I think that whole transition deserves a lot more thinking. And I think we're not a technology leader. The technology comes from the rest of the world and we adopt it, but we adopt it at our own pace in a way that makes sense for us and doesn't put people like taxi drivers out of business. So it's not a very good answer, I know, but you've put your finger on a very important issue and that deserves a lot more attention. And I think with all the institutions that we're setting up here, you know, with research capabilities, I think that's one of the issues we're going to have to look at.
It's a good enough answer. I mean, I think it does speak to the deeper conversation we need to have around the green hydrogen conversation. I'm coming back to Pablo. Again, you had a graph of, I think in the south is where the concentration of solar is, and then in the north is where wind is. What has been the challenges in that respect?
Hi, thank you. Yes, just the opposite, but don't mind. No, in our south, we have like we are facing some challenges. I think in lot of terms, I think in terms of development mainly. Our system, electrical system, is in the south is not connected to the rest of the country. So the main challenge or the main question there is what is going to happen if you connect like 1 gigawatt power plant of wind power plant, or even there is also one project that is about 10 giga announced for a system that is roughly the 50 megawatts. So I'm talking about 50 megawatts, 150 to 1 giga or 10 gigas of installed capacity. So that is one challenge of the system. And of course, there's also another challenge related to permits. Depending on the place, you will have some permits. You will have for sure environmental impact. Every project has environmental impact, more or less. So we have to assure and go like in the line with the environment, how to deal with such kind of environmental impact for the benefit of the country and the benefit of the local cities. So that are some of the questions that we are now working on, I think, in terms of more challenging issues.
Thank you, sir. Coming back to Marco, the Namibian challenge that was earlier highlighted by the chairperson of the Economic Association was around inequality, unemployment, and poverty. We have read Hyphen's business plan, and in that, please let's take the country in your confidence in that respect.
So I'm going to start before the jobs, because I think you owe your country a huge debt of gratitude as Namibians in terms of the way the system has been designed for this, for the establishment of this industry. Effectively, Namibia has taken the decision that it is going to be the partner of the private sector in the development of its hydrogen industry. So Namibia is the custodian of the wealth on behalf of the Namibian people. I can't go into specifics around what that means in terms of actual numbers. Please ask James Mayopi, your people from, or the chair of the GHC. But effectively, government owns the land, so the recipients of land rentals government will receive royalties on the sale of every ton of hydrogen. A government will receive taxes on like the ordinary course of business through the emergence of this business. Those are the direct economic benefits that Namibia gets in terms of the project. Then Namibia has the option, not the obligation, to buy into the project. So at the moment, when we say the funding obligation, I think it's one of Robin's points, the funding obligation, it's a heightened obligation. There is no debt or equity that government is obliged to raise for this project. Government is making available the land, the legislative environment, in order to enable the establishment of the industry. The mobilization of capital is being done by the private sector. We would sincerely hope that government does take up an equity interest in the project. We think that is the most important way of aligning interests and reducing conflicts, is to have everybody in the same boat, everybody benefiting from the same market forces in terms of how those prices will fluctuate for this green hydrogen commodity over time. That's the economic bucket that is then for the benefit of Namibia and the people. We then have, well, Hyphen is the first project, we have to mobilize a large number of people in order to deliver on the project. And our estimations are that over the 4-year construction period of both phases, it's somewhere in the order of 15,000 people. That is simply enormous. If you look at, I'm going to put a name out there. The largest civils construction company in Namibia is a company called Namibia Construction, and they supported us in our bid, so I can share that with you. Their order book a year is something in the order of $1 billion Namibian dollars. If you put that into context in terms of how much we need to build out, it's simply enormous. So there's a huge opportunity for the Namibian economy in order to participate not just at the jobs level, but in terms of establishing industries to build this out. And as per my last slide, Hyphen is but the first of a potential 50 size of these projects. So there's a real drive, ability to create sustainability, particularly in the construction sector, which is normally very cyclical and movement busts. In this industry, it can be perpetual. So we're looking at 15,000 people during the construction period. At full operations, we're looking at it's around 3,000 people. At the completion of both phases, roughly 1,500 per phase. The implications of that for Ludus in particular as an area within the country is going to be enormous. So the add-on benefits are going to be very, very big. And that's currently what we're trying to unpack with government. How do we enable that together? Because we as industry need to work together with the university who we are working with, together with people within government about how do we create the right frameworks in order to drive education in the areas that we need. And we're hoping this year to take the first trainees into one of our shareholders' facilities in Germany for training as wind turbine technicians. And we're currently working with government to try and enable that. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you. So, Robert, coming back to you, and I guess this should be the last one. Robert, coming back to you, and because Denver is being ruthless with time, and I think the guys want to go enjoy their Namibian delicacy that they've been promised. Please give us, in closing remarks, Robert, around the economic implications if this project of green hydrogen takes off, and if the feasibility study does not bring the
I think most projects don't, the future is uncertain, so there'll always be changes. So however good your feasibility study, I think things are always going to turn out differently. I'm pretty upbeat about this, but I do come back to the point I was trying to make during the presentation, is that it might be better to take things slightly in a more paced way rather than rushing things and getting it right as we possibly can. I mean, training, I think, is a good example. I would rather take 5 years and have more Namibians employed in the industry than rushing it in 2 years and just employing, foreign workers. I think there is a trade-off there. Some things do take time. I think this is going to happen. It's going to happen, and Namibia is going to be there somewhere. So I'm pretty optimistic. I think the key thing for me is for government to make sure that the investment environment is right. These big investments that are going to come in. That's to me the most important thing. And I would just say, I mean, Marco said what he said, and that's fine. But I wouldn't place any expectation on big infrastructure projects like that to generate jobs. That's not where the jobs will come from. There might be 3,000 jobs, and there possibly be highly skilled jobs, and that's a good thing. I'm not denigrating that at all. But by getting the core business right, I think we stand a better chance with that improved overall environment of creating jobs across the economy. It will have many positive impacts throughout the economy if we get it right, and that's what we've got to aim for.
Follow-up question.
I'll just say yes or no.
Do you see the contribution of green hydrogen as a new industry to the other sectors that are currently, for instance, your agriculture? How do you see the integration of it?
Yeah, that's sort of what I meant in my previous answer, that there will be spin-offs if we get it right. I can't say for certain what those spin-offs will be at this stage, but I think we saw already this morning some very imaginative pilot projects, and that's the sort of thing we need to do, dip our toe in the water and then take it from there. You know, if you'd asked me 2 years ago about green hydrogen, I would have just looked at you. The economy, I mean, economists are hopeless at forecasting anyway, but forecasting new technologies and new ways of doing things is a mug's game at the best of times, even for the most skilled economists. So I think it's a culture of experimentation, risk-taking, and moving forward as we learn more.
Yeah. No, I think, Jennifer, your eyes are fixed right on me. But I think we have tried to do justice to the limited time that you gave us. On behalf of the session, I want to thank Pablo for joining us from Chile. We hope that James and his team have taken those notes with the challenges that are in Chile. Marco will give you our full support to try and make a success of your opportunity that Namibia has given you. Robin, we need your difficult questions. Please keep them coming, and we're looking forward to the book that's coming in September. Thank you very much.